On a ripple effect. Grateful for you joining. This is a Digital World Town Hall that is underway. We'll be focusing on some of the new things that have happened over the last week, and then general questions and topics that are kind of going on around in the world. Thank you for taking the time, especially those hosts that are here. We've got Elle and we've got Wally. And last week we got to hear from John. I actually missed Terrence, but grateful for all those that do participate. Not a lot of volume, but grateful for the questions, and it's kind of small by design right now, so you'll see and understand why. This is a private membership association. Some of the things we'll talk about are for those members and those that want to join. You'll understand more about that if you'd like. Some of the things we'll talk about are forward-moving statements around technology. Technology as humanity can actually use it around really building a system of governance that individuals can actually own their own identity and their own data and their own future without centralized, what we call secret combinations that basically are owning and controlling things. So the model is simple. We basically focus on a device like an access device. It could be a laptop, it could be a tablet, it could be a phone, but it is an access device that has cryptographic keys on it. We'll talk a lot more about that and how it ties to decentralized systems in the back end. With that, I'd like to introduce some of the folks that are actually joining us on the call today. And just grateful for their attendance and their commitment to always kind of follow along. I know that there's a lot of noise out there in the world, and some folks have been watching it for a long time and are actually part of it. It's not just a matter of let's plug into the news, but how do we actually connect to it and actually be involved? And I'd like to just thank those that actually come on and do that, and just for the participation there. So we'll come back to questions from this group. Right now, we'd like to provide an element of updates primarily as it relates to the Hawaiian Kingdom, because there's other, and I'll come back over here. And for those that are not aware, we're focused in the Pacific, and within the Pacific, there's multiple different countries that we're working with. Within the last about 15 months, we've met with about 19 countries, and now almost 5 are in the process of rolling out the technology. We're doing kind of another update on the Hawaiian Kingdom, and then we've got some exciting news about 2 different countries that we'll be working with on rolling out, namely some pretty prominent folks. And then after that, how it actually comes together as a coalition. When I say a coalition, I'm talking about an ecosystem where lots of different countries that are oceanic based, so they're connected to a body of water, namely oceans, like the Pacific Ocean, the Atlantic Ocean. And there's 9 other countries within the Atlantic Ocean that we're engaging with currently. But that's going to be a long process, but we'll go through that. And it talks a lot about how ownership in the digital world actually provides privacy and freedoms and independence from systems that historically we haven't been able to enjoy. And what we talk about is, and for those that didn't watch this last week, Phil Lane is focused on, in North America, this is Phil Lane Jr. here, he's focused on what they call the Eagle and the Condor reunion, which is North and South America coming together. There's another gentleman that's focused on the east to the west and with some political bodies, but mainly around 740 different indigenous communities that he's worked with from the east to the west. And so we had an opportunity to meet with him, and his name is Sasha Stone, this last week. And between Sasha and Phil, there's a lot of coverage around indigenous communities. And those communities are comprised of different ecosystems. Maybe they're kingdoms, maybe they're nations, maybe they're a country. There's a difference between a country, a state, a nation. And then some of them have counties or other operating organizations, maybe entities that actually have companies or different parts of companies, maybe a trust, et cetera, that are built in. And showing how these different types of what we call archetypes can actually roll out decentralized technology within their environment, whether that's with members or citizens or nationals. So we're grateful for some of the opportunities there. It's really important to understand how this can actually impact different parts of the world. So you'll notice this is kind of a target, if you will, but there's some parts to this that will link together cultures that historically they may have known that they're connected, but And if you just look in the mirror, they can see that they're connected, but they've been disconnected. One of the things that Phil Lane taught me, I've been working with him since 2005. He taught me, Mike, well, there's a couple things. One of the biggest things, probably biggest lessons, is, Mike, the longest road in life is from your head to your heart, and understanding that piece of life. But he also went through and talked about how ancestors would pass down from generations to generations around understanding that the unity would come from what he called the cloud. And that's really what a lot of this is. So grateful for his insights. You know, someday he'll be on this call, hopefully before it's too late. But we're getting some feedback from some folks. If you've got your mic off, you're welcome to take your mic off, but just make sure there's no noise behind you if you could. So within the digital ecosystem here, there's different countries that we're currently working with. And some of them we've done a lot with, some of them we've done a little with, but you can kind of see the roadmap of either invites. Most of them are physical invites, so we actually met with team members face to face. Some of them are remote digital invites, but a majority of them have actually been face to face. This coalition is driven specifically for decentralized systems, for independence governance that actually ties these different countries and nations and kingdoms together, so they can actually have trade. They don't have to worry about foreign exchange and wire systems that historically have complicated things. They don't have to understand all the different colonial-based laws and this law and that law and how things plug together per se. It's a framework that they can actually leverage to plug in and out of and take the best that they want to use. They don't have to take all of it. But it's kind of like in the United States of America, there were different laws and constitutional rights, and then laws that could be enacted and chosen based upon the states. Some of those are like what they call UCC laws. So these are universal commercial code laws where you can actually say this is going to happen with assets. So you'll hear us talk a lot about assets. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you a little bit about some of the advancements within the asset area. So we're looking at the Hawaiian Kingdom, kind of the next 3 years, goals and objectives and reviews, all focused on decentralized technologies, different abilities. And it's not just ClearPhones that are focused on this, or Hawaiian phones, but you can now get within the Google Play Store or App Play Store or Claros Marketplace different apps that will actually connect any of these different devices together. So that's, if you're really not paying attention there, that's massive. So we went from one type of decentralized phone now to almost every single phone that, that's a modern type phone that's out there. And when we talk about identity management, we're talking about it in two different realms, the physical realm and the digital realm. And so this is something that you'll see that's relatively new. As a matter of fact, even though you may have been on the weekly calls, this will be the first time that you see it. There's an element of an individual that can have a device, and that device can keep their identity private, but still validate their identity. And that's what it looks like here. And it kind of goes what we call, it follows a life cycle. So how an individual is actually brought into the world or born. Maybe they're adopted. For instance, Charles and Kamanu on this call, they went through an adoption process in my world. You'll notice a different name from Michael to Maka, which is a fun thing, but we'll go through that a little later on. But this is actually a process that can be followed. By the way, Charles, I'd love to connect with you on this in the future. I'll talk a little bit more about that. And then maybe after adoption, you've got marriage or a driver's license or permit, and then maybe a death certificate. So for those that are not aware, a lot of different states in the United States of America, because a lot of this data is actually transparent in some ways, each state gets hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars of assets that go unclaimed because people actually pass away. A lot of people don't understand this or think through it. They just think, well, maybe it's a distant relative. For instance, my father passed away a couple of years ago, and his whole life was all about, really in the back of his mind, at least is what he told us, it was about kids and being able to create something for the future for his kids. And he would end up collecting tools to build different things, and he'd put it in the storage unit. And when he passed away, none of his kids saw any of the tools. So an example would be, as we work through life, it's not just the memories that we create, whether they're physical or digital, but what we actually do with them to organize them. And we have a choice to say, we're going to register these different types of things. And I'll get through, be specific here. For instance, by the way, most understand that there's a new financial system that's built into this that can actually self-govern, self-audit, self-regulate, as well as find corruption. That's pretty beautiful and advanced. So if you haven't actually used for instance, in this ecosystem, it's the Hawaiian Life app. But if you haven't used it, please just go to your favorite store, or grab a Clear phone or a Freedom phone or an Armor phone or Hawaiian phone and have it pre-installed, or just literally test it. See how it works. It's fast, it's simple, it's easy, it's light, and it gives you the ability to actually own your own assets. In this case, maybe it's land, or maybe it's a vehicle. And if you notice, these are all new types of these. When you look closely, you see a license plate that is actually a derived key from a master private key. And it's not just for vehicles, but almost every walk of life, whether it's a boat, whether it's a weapon, whether it's some type of transportation. But there's much more that you can actually register than just simple things like this. And when you do that, you can actually have future generations that can actually have access to it. You can not only just do asset management, but you can actually register those assets within a certain jurisdiction that then can link to the physical world. A lot of people may not understand what that means, but if you think about it, and if you think about and understand why this oceanic topic is so important, is everything is actually connected to water in the world one way or another. Some people may say, no, I'm in Idaho or I'm in Colorado and I don't have any water around me. But what you have around you is counties and states. And those counties actually have the right to choose what their border is. So do states. For instance, in Oregon right now, which is connected to the Pacific Ocean, if you want, I can actually pull up a map, but I probably shouldn't. No, I'll do it. I'll just go right here. So if you look at this oceanic ecosystem, you can go through Oregon, into Idaho, through to Utah, down to New Mexico, and over to Texas. And that would actually create a connection that would still hook the oceanic ecosystem. So what we really don't think about, and specifically in the Pacific, we're talking about the largest mass of anything on Earth, 175 square miles, 175 million square miles of water. I mean, it's just massive. I don't even think this map proportionately covers it correctly. I really don't think that the maps that humanity uses actually has it balanced out. It's so massive. But when you think about it around oceanic and how water is so important to life, for instance, without water, we wouldn't be alive. And we think about, well, no, without air and all these other, but really it's the water that breathes life, even without air underwater, so to speak. So it's the oceanic ecosystem that can actually bring folks together and do it in such a way where their identity and their assets and their data can actually connect in. A good example is how you can have a vehicle that's an asset that actually has a registration that then ties to something like a plate. And a plate, imagine if you actually had no sales tax on a vehicle. Why? Because you're in a jurisdiction that doesn't use the US dollars or Canadian dollars or Australian dollars or New Zealand dollars, which all have a taxing authority. Why? Because they all come from the same type of source. Canada, Australia, New Zealand are perfect examples of colonial-based countries that basically started from a colonial-based system. The US actually started, the United States of America started from people that left that same system. So the way that in the US, we're supposed to have the same types of taxations. In 1913 is when they started it, and they justified it. Does anybody know why they justified income tax when the country was created, to get away from it? By raise of hands? Or just by blurting it out? Does anybody know why the United States of America was created to not have income tax, but why they implemented it. They implemented it in time of war, and they implemented it to only be 1%, and it was supposed to be targeted at the wealthy. Now what you see is just the opposite. The wealthy are the ones that understand the game, and they understand what mandatory exemptions are. If you understand that phrase, there's a simple phrase, the Rockefellers use it, the Kennedy, they all use it. And it's basically, if you go look at the IRS code, it's in section 805, 508, no, 805, no, 508. It's a mandatory exemption from filing if you do certain things with your assets. So they find their own loopholes to be able to get out of it. And the brunt of people end up paying a tax, whether it's 24%, 35%. And people think, well, that's not that much. I can deal with it. And then, you can, that's fine. If you want to just conform and do that, that's fine. This is not about protesting a tax within a particular system, but it's around understanding and identifying that we have a choice. We have a choice to be able to be within a certain jurisdiction, to be able to have certain types of things occur within that jurisdiction. And that's what this is about. It's about being able to be free and independent from systems that may have centralized control. And then to have, most systems are like, well, I need to, if I have this issue, I have to go through a court system or a process. And it's usually the same type of thing. He who has the money ends up winning. When you really understand the World Economic Forum, and when you understand economics, it's actually all about numbers. It's all about money. You throw more money at the system, and while you do it, it creates confusion. You mix that up with a war, which is actually where the taxation started, and it gets much crazier. And when you say it's only 24 or 25 or maybe 35%, that's income tax. Talk about sales tax, talk about property tax, talk about use tax, value add tax, estate tax, probate tax. It's very different. And that's a part of the slavery. It's a taxation. Some people would call it tyranny, where you've got taxation without representation. So those are some of the things that you'll see that are new, as well as insurance and banking tied to certain ecosystems. So for those of you that haven't seen the actual Hawaiian shopping system, there's a site that's actually gone live. There's parts and pieces of it that is actually working through a process, and it's focused around this Dala. This is a wonderful man. I've actually spent some time with him and got to know him, and he's actually gotten a political party around the shopping party approved within the state of Hawaii twice before. And just some of the data and content that he runs with is absolutely phenomenal. I look forward to having him on and going through some of that in the future. But it basically comes down to, you vote with what you buy and how you buy it. It's just that simple. So I'll say that again. You vote with what you buy and how you buy it. So if people say, I want to buy something that's local, then you know what? People will actually go and make local products. If you purchase it with a local currency, then people will use that currency. But it comes down to the trust associated with it. So I hope you really understood that. It's about buying and what you buy it with. So this has actually gone live. We're in the process of, there's some very unique elements to this and roll out strategies around it. So we'll spend some more time on that in the future. But when we really understand what you've kind of seen here, there'll actually be an insurance side of it and a banking side of it that will actually be able to go live. In this particular country itself, or nation, or kingdom, you're looking at different types of, well, islands, or a group of islands that, and I don't know about you, but when I learned the word Hawaii, I thought it was a state. I didn't understand that there were multiple of them, and I didn't understand that then they just linked and took off, they basically took off one of the words. So this name, the big island of Hawaii, is actually Hawaii. But what they did was they wrapped all of this into one and masked the kingdom of Hawaii, the Hawaiian Islands. That's a big step in the wrong direction that, just like taxation, has been literally leapfrogged over and just ignored. So the Hawaiian Kingdom is a group of islands, and there's much more than what is actually identified here, that actually had their own autonomous ecosystems that in all intents and purposes were decentralized. They lived on their own, they operated on their own, and they understand it. And it's not just the Hawaiian Islands, but really when we look at the group of islands and many decentralized islands, they understand independence. Rarotonga, Atutaki, any of the Cook Islands, they understand that independence. When you look at certain Maoris within the New Zealand culture, they understood it. They understand iwis and what certain mountains ranges meant and how they were independent. So this is a system that will go live within the next week. And so you're being able to see this a little bit in advance, but ultimately, and there'll be some differences to it, but we look forward to your feedback and for you actually being able to review that as we roll that out. So those are some of the advancements, around the shopping, around the development, around when we talk about having, a new type of insurance, which we actually have a couple meetings a little bit later on today on, and then also some of the banking side of it as well. So I'll go ahead and stop talking. And if anyone's got any topics or questions or feedback, maybe on what you saw or on anything that's going on in life, there's no boundaries on what you can go into here, but thoughts, feedback, observations, comments. Maybe we can.
I'm going to ask you about something, Michael.
Mm-hmm.
I've been hearing a lot about the Antarctica in the past couple of months, 2-3 months. The elite, going down there, the Germans, the Nazis, Obama. I'm just wondering if you know anything about that. There's supposed to be a whole civilization, I don't know.
Yeah, so I do know individuals that have actually gone down. It was actually over 2 years ago. There are individuals that I thought they were developing technology that's in the same realm that we're in, and there are individuals that I thought were doing the right things. And I can't be specific on names, but what I can tell you is they met with the same folks that were at the World Economic Forum, which for those of you that aren't aware, I went to those way before COVID, and that's how some of the ways that we understood that what's happening is not right. And it's very, very real. These secret combinations are very, very real. This isn't some hearsay or some speculation. And that's one reason why we would dedicate our lives to saying, if we don't do something now, like in our lifetime, like in a material way, then these secret combinations will have the opportunity to control humanity. And right now, you talk about taxation, and I'm not one that's a tax protester. I don't believe that. And as a matter of fact, in my own world, I go ahead and walk through the front door and comply and pay. And it's just even though it's not right, but for me in the role that I'm in, I just do it. But a lot of these other folks, they look at it as an opportunity to make money. So a lot of these folks are in these circles and down in Antarctica and other parts of the world because there's massive amounts of money. And we as humans, we relate success or life to money. And one of the things that I learned early on in life was, and I used to, when I was 35, I think I bought my first $5 million house and thought that was what a husband did and a father, and that's provide and protect, but it was very wrong. I learned a lesson that life is not about money. It's not. It's about relationships and leaving this place better than when we came, and learning lessons along the way too. But a lot of these folks, they're driven primarily by money. And so they would even take things that are good technologies, meant for good. And a lot of open source technologies fall into this bucket. For instance, if you've used WhatsApp, You know that the technology is a good technology, and then it was sold to Facebook. And when it was sold to Facebook, I won't use specific names, but this is a very relevant answer to your question. When it was sold to Facebook, inside of the asset purchase agreement, it was determined that the encryption on these conversations would stay, so people could continue to use it and think that they were private. And, they likened that to Telegram, which is not private in any way. Telegram is the most insecure technology you can use, but Telegram and WhatsApp came around at the same time. So fast forward a good year, 18 months after this transaction happened with WhatsApp and Facebook, and the technology, they asked to do certain things with metadata, okay? So it wasn't going to break the encryption, but what they were using was some of the metadata that could come off of it that could actually break the encryption. It wouldn't decipher the packets, but all you needed to know is how to tag it and then store it. And the reason why that's important is, like, the NSA building in Utah copies every transaction of packets everywhere, every voice, every data, every email, every search from everyone worldwide. Doesn't matter if you're connected to the World Wide Web, you have an IP address, an address, a URL, anything that has data flowing, and 100% of it is tracked and traced. But the way that they trace it is through this metadata and tagging. So everything is actually tracked, traced at the global level, the NSA, but then it's also linked at the Facebooks. And if you don't believe me, go read Tools and Weapons. But it's linked at the Facebooks, the Googles, the Microsofts, the LinkedIns, all of these different systems, these social platforms that we operate off of. It basically links them together. And so it's like, okay, well, how do you identify the data? What it can actually accomplish is getting to the point where an individual can actually be profiled in such a way where if let's say that someone said watermelons in a certain sentence, then other systems could actually pick that up. And yesterday I actually talked with a gentleman named Paul Allen, he's a wonderful guy, not the Paul Allen Microsoft CEO, but the Paul Allen founder and CEO of myfamily.com. If you don't remember what myfamily.com is, he started that way back in the Alta Vista days and Yahoo days, even before Google was around. Okay, he was like I don't know if you know this, but the number one use for technology and web searching is pornography. The number two use is genealogy. He was actually like in the top 2-3 sites in the world. So this guy, wonderful guy, absolute. I've met with him many times over the years. And what he's basically doing and linking into the digital world. So we're going to have some beautiful things that we're talking about there. So, not only building businesses and identities, but actually linking in memories. Who are we? Where did we go? What did we see? What did we listen to? What did it look like then? Whether it's a journal or intelligent questions or photos or videos, but it links it to our genealogical digital footprint. And then you can do the same type of thing, but the technology the NSA is using is to profile people, and I believe it's not for good, or they'll say it's for protection to justify it and do whatever. That's how the whole Snowden stuff came out. But this technology will actually be able to link together. So for instance, some people may say, Mike, why do you go on and actually do these types of meetings? And I would say, well, the reason is so that it can actually be documented. For instance, if people wanted to understand a certain policy, so when certain things actually happened in a certain way with a certain topic, it can automatically pull up the video and the streaming content and tie it all together. And it's not just as a system like what we're talking about here as it gets built and rolled out, because a lot of people won't believe this digital world and the stability and the history and all that. So this is another reason why this is, recorded and streamed. But the ability to actually search it and have content, not just for a social type thing, but for a political thing. So how can laws and voices and votes actually be realized and heard? And that's another important part of what the digital world represents, is the ability to actually vote, to have a voice that's heard. And what I'll do is I'll pull up an example. So I'm going to just go to hawaiian.live. This is the existing site. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into General Council. You can see the different members. If people want to join it, they just click right here, and then they can actually join the actual meetings. You can see the different meetings here. Let's see if I can jump into this one. So if you go into the particular meetings, you can actually then see an agenda set, and then you can actually go in and vote for it. So let's say for those that haven't seen how this actually works, and then we'll come back. Let's see. So I'm just going to open up. Remember a Life app, and so you can only have one Life app on a phone. So if you've got a clear phone, you wouldn't download, Hawaiian Life or others. You can try, but it actually only works with one particular Life app. The goal is to create Life apps that actually work for different parts of the systems and world. So, that one's actually expired. So that had a time frame on it. So imagine different systems in the world being able to govern themselves dynamically based upon systems. So I hope you're understanding an example of what that could be. But the folks that are in Antarctica, they don't want that type of a governance system. They don't want transparency. They don't want everyone to be involved in it. It's kind of like what's happening within the Hawaii fires right now, where you have basically a state that says, we're going to create a company that is private, that has a board that is private, that is self-selected based upon a public to private. So you've transferred basically from public to private, and now they can just go and pull in funds and resources and spend them how they like without any kind of normal oversight, assuming that the public even had the oversight. But it's how they can control things. And you saw things in control. People talk about, well, I don't understand it when you talk about these secret combinations. What is the secret combinations, and how does that actually come together? What does that mean? And this is an example of it. So secret combinations are in different industries or verticals. Maybe some are in oil or gas or supply chain or media or health or finance or tech. And then what they do is they work together to then take over government. And that's what you saw within the tech world, right? Somebody's going to say something? So within the tech world, Dominion voting systems, any kind of governmental ecosystem. For instance, we have a wonderful man that is on this call today. So Billy, I've kind of just highlighted you here. Billy actually ran for prime minister against Jacinda in the country of New Zealand. And the voting systems that were used there were Dominion voting systems. Billy, will you tell us a little bit about the involvement that you had? So I'll kind of set the table for you. I personally watched in America Donald Trump go to every state, at least the majority of the states that I ever saw, and he had miles and miles of people that would drive, that would fill stadiums, that would fill airplane hangars, that would just massively follow him. In contrast, we saw someone that would have social distancing and maybe less than 100 people at his events. Whereas some of the other ones, I'm talking hundreds of thousands of people. So massive volume difference. And then when the numbers come in, it's different. So Billy, would you review the numbers and perception that you experienced before the elections and then during and then after?
Sure. Yeah, I'll do my best with that. So I was basically the leader of a massive civil liberties concerned political party called New Zealand Public Party, and we ended up merging with a sitting member of Parliament who had a very small party, and that was called Advance New Zealand. Within a very, very short time, I had millions upon millions upon millions of people through my own personal messaging. I had the largest social media account in New Zealand, surpassing that of Jacinda Ardern's and the Labour Party. And I was voted the fourth preferred Prime Minister out of 121 candidates in what's called a Colmar-Brunton public political poll. and that had never happened before. We basically went over the mark. We went through a period of huge events. I'm talking, we were filling up gigantic event centres with 3,000 people at a go. Now, for New Zealand, that's massive. That you don't see that. I was just trying to find some examples online when you mentioned that, and essentially, I had 80,000 people in my own personal data support base, etc., etc. We had 60 candidates across New Zealand that were part of our party network. We were, by definition, on that alone, we were the third largest political party in New Zealand. Of course, out came the slander, the attacks on myself and other candidates, and suddenly I'd been a White Ribbon ambassador, which is an anti-violence and anti-family violence campaign. I was an ambassador for the White Ribbon campaign, and next minute in the media, I was being presented as some kind of woman beater, which really surprised my wife, who's known me for 21 years, and she was horrified by that. And so that was just the beginning of it. But the central campaign planks really was decentralization from the globalist version of a connected planet. So the globalist version of a connected planet means control. It doesn't mean all the good things like, intercooperation, integration around problem solving, health, removal of war as an option, all those sorts of things. But globalist control is, as you've been saying, Mike, is when you have these secret combinations that are working behind the scenes together to bring about these control measures, such as whether it be medical tyranny and digital surveillance, central bank digital currencies, climate change and green economic tyranny and control, and all the institutions and systems that go with that, finance, education, military, bank, all of that stuff goes into that. And so the plank of my campaign, I guess, centered around decentralization from the nefarious global organizations. And that was very, very clear. In early 2020, I was literally preaching against the World Health Organization, the World Economic Forum, and the UN Sustainable Development Program. And so the COVID tyranny, of course, was just the pandemic was created for the vaccine and for the control measures that they were bringing in. Project ID 2020 of Bill Gates and Microsoft and Amazon Web Services is the antithesis to the work that Michael's doing with a digital world. So this digital world that they want to bring in is going to measure everything about a human, leading to a net zero human and a digital surveilled human, finance, social credit scoring, and of course the 15-minute city paradigm. And so really, in my work that I'm doing now, I'm leading the New Zealand Citizen COVID-19 inquiry, which is I'm one of the commissioners and I'm one of the chief investigators. And you may make the mistake of thinking, well, that's just about COVID, but it's not, because I well recognize that COVID is just one link in the chain of tyranny. And so the citizen inquiry into COVID really is an opportunity to shine a light on an epic crime against humanity and a scamdemic, so that we can shine a light on what we've been through, hold those accountable that have caused such grievous harms, but more importantly, or as important, shine a light on the future that they want to bring down the pipeline at us. And so the work that I'm doing, and again, with great thanks to Michael and Claire, is to use this citizen inquiry to emphasize the need for decentralization. But I guess the first place people have got to start is really realizing their own personal sovereignty. That's really super important. From there, once you've sorted your own heart out and opinion around personal sovereignty and what that means, then you can start to look at your community and then your country and beyond that. And you'll be able to talk from an informed point of view, because you'll realize that when you have unelected bureaucrats in a gigantic octopus of an NGO, like, let's use the United Nations, making decisions for you based on collectivism, based on centralization through a one governance system, you are outsourcing your freedoms and your liberties. And unfortunately, through programs like the World Economic Forum's Young Global Leaders Program, the International Union of Socialist Youth, which is an incubator for young Marxists, connected to pseudo secret societies such as Chatham House London, and of course the Bilderbergers and Trilateral Commission, Council of Foreign Relations, of course, all those groups like that, secret combinations again. Once you sort of look into those, you will start to see how this Hydra system is connected to force us into this global governance system that they want to impose on every living man, woman, and baby. And so really, as you pointed out, Mike, the work that you're doing and that we all need to do is to educate as quickly and articulately as well as calmly the masses as to what's coming down the pipeline at us very, very incredibly quickly. And if we can't sort of make up our minds to jump on the train with you, Mike, we're probably going to be ran over by the other train that's coming down the other train track. And I think the whole decentralisation discussion is really important. So my work with NZCCI, New Zealand Citizen COVID-19 Inquiry, is to shine a light on what we're dealing with, and decentralisation is a huge part. Now, again, I just want to, if I was speaking to other people that didn't have what you all understand, I'll be saying, don't think that decentralisation doesn't mean we can't be interconnected, but it's the intent of that connection and whether does it make someone free, does it make someone personally sovereign or not? And if it doesn't, then we've got big problems. So that would be my commentary around that, Mike. I hope that all makes sense. I kind of did a bit of a hydra myself into various threads there. But I was in, just to finish off just quickly, I was in Melbourne and a couple of weeks ago and had some important meetings there. And then I went to the Australian Federal Parliament in Canberra, and I got to sign a mutual support agreement with Senator Malcolm Roberts, who is a part of a team of about 7 different senators. They're bipartisan, which means they're from differing political parties, but they've united under the umbrella of fighting against globalism and tyranny. And so Senator Roberts is one of the small group of international commentators that we're bringing in on board as supporters and commissioners into this project that we're doing, including the National COVID Inquiry Chairman from Canada, a man called Ted Kuntz, who's done an incredible job of the Canadian COVID-19 Citizen Inquiry, and of course other political leaders such as Andrew Bridgeton in the United Kingdom, who's a very, very brave member of the UK House of Commons. And then from there, we'll be extending into the European Union Parliament in Brussels. So there's quite a work stream there. And I want to encourage everybody, start thinking big to deal with this.
What's the time frame for this?
Well, you know what? Funny enough, we've been looking at that at the moment. So next week, I've got a planning session with Andrew Bridgeton from the United Kingdom. That is preparing the groundwork for me to be able to go to the UK to get his support, sign off on an agreement, but promote that we're doing this inquiry and that we are creating a global envelope for all of the data that proves that what we've been living through has been a huge scam and where it's leading to. And so, which is of course centralization, bad version. And so that we are hitting the road in March and April. We're doing a nationwide national hearing program where citizens will be coming to the hearings to talk about what they've been through and how they've suffered at the hands of the New Zealand Labor government's COVID-19 response strategy. Once we do that, we will correlate the evidence and data that we have according to the terms of reference document that we have. Our terms of reference document has 204 reference points in it, so it's very in-depth. And so what we're hoping is by June, July, we will have correlated most of the data in what we call a summary case file, which has all of the evidence in it and its particular categories. And then from there, our intention is then to take it international, promote what we've found. And then once we've done that, we would be looking for international legal advice about what we're doing. And from there, we're going to come back to New Zealand, and we intend to do two things. Number one is to commence civil litigation and proceedings against individuals that we may have identified that have caused harm and crimes, and then also a group criminal complaint as well. So we allege right up front that we believe crimes have been committed against the citizens of New Zealand. So we're not mucking around, we're calling it out. And so it's going to be very quick. We don't want to muck around. It needs to be quick. It doesn't mean that we're going to sacrifice precision and accuracy for haste. We won't do that. But we have got 4 years of data and evidence already. And so really it's the big part of it is correlation. And so to get our summary case file together.
So where are you filing it, and what's the venue and jurisdiction?
Right. So there's a couple of different avenues available. We've already had the Māori government in New Zealand has done its own inquiry and had a tribunal that found the Prime Minister, the Minister of Health, Minister of COVID Response, the Director General of Health guilty of crimes against humanity in New Zealand. And they've found them guilty. They've also gone through a process of sentencing them.
That's already happened and done.
It's already happened, completely happened. Now, the problem that we have is in two key areas. One is in enforcement. Obviously, the other guys have got all the judiciary, they've got the court system, the military, the police, and the Māori government does not have that. So enforcement is a problem there. Secondly, it's viewed as outside of mainstream culture process that they've went through, right? Because not everybody thinks that Māori culture and the traditional historical agreements that we have, such as treaties, hold any sort of any credibility. And they do, they absolutely do. It's been proven time and time again from a lawful and legal point of view. So those are the two problems, is that enforcement and cultural acceptance of the findings, whereby what we are doing is some sort of far more mainstream culture. So our strategy is that we will get our findings, we will hand them back to the Māori government as well to put into their basket. From there, we will be looking for direction and advice from someone called Lord Sumption. Lord Sumption is spelled S-U-M-P-T-O-N, Lord Sumption.
Right, thank you. I've got headphones on because there's someone else in the room.
Yeah,
And
so sorry guys, I haven't got my headphones on me. I just got another call in this room going on. But anyway, so we're going to take it to Lord. We're going to take it to Lord Sumpton for his view.
But anyway,
from there, we'll take it to a tribunal and then back to New Zealand. So we're looking at international tribunals for this as well.
Wow. Is there a website that we can go to kind of follow this? I've got up and I'm sharing riveroflies.co.nz or NZ. Is this the right place to look, or are you doing it somewhere else? Or
no, so it's nzcci.com, and you can download nzcci.com, and you can download our terms of reference document there. You'll see that we've got people like Mike Yedden in our advisory team, Robert Malone, Steve Kirsch, Andrew Bridgeton, Malcolm Roberts, and a whole heap of doctors, scientists, legal people, medical people. So please, family, feel absolutely free to go to nzcci.com and look at that. And by the way, if you see anything we've missed, or if you'd like to add something to it, please do not be shy to let me know. I'm not an island, although I live on an island, and we need everybody to make sure that this is a very, very solid foundational document for our inquiry. So please don't think I'd be offended if Becca or Danielle or Charles or anyone else, or Al or Raymond or Charles has any insights that we've missed. Please do not feel like I'd be offended if you want to send those to me. It's really important.
This is a big deal. I didn't even know you were cranking on this. This is huge.
Have you got?
Go ahead.
Have you got the website?
Yeah, I've got it up and I'm streaming it. Folks are not seeing it here. I'll go ahead and share it here just so this body can see it as well. But
can you put it in notes, the website?
Okay, thank you. If you scroll down from there, Mike, you will see, there you go. That's the New Zealand that's the terms of reference there. If you just click on that, if you scroll up slightly, there you go, terms of reference doc. If you click on that, then what you'll get is this. The terms of reference document will come up that I wrote. If you scroll through that, then you'll see this is an important quote, this one. The rule of law is not only important to ensure that a justice system functions correctly, but is essential to functions correctly. The rule of law is equally important to maintaining the confidence of New Zealanders in the justice system and system of governance. And so that's a very covert way of telling people a message there, and I know that you know that. If you scroll down through there, Mike, you will see that it's a very succinct document as much as we can. It was going to be, it was going to be like 50 something pages, but we're able to typeset it down to 30 pages. But it gives an executive summary. It's a point to why we're doing this. If you move further along, then you'll see the scope. So we're saying that it's a criminal investigation. So we're right up front with that. If you keep scrolling down, we've got specific allegations, which are only examples. If you keep going.
this is amazing. Absolutely.
Yeah,
amazing.
I did this. So this is terms of reference. So it goes right into it really does go into the meat of what we've been dealing with. If you keep going down, way past that, you'll see that we've got 200, I think there's 204 points on this version, maybe 203. Inquiry rollout talks about how we're going to do that, the aim of the inquiry. If you keep scrolling down, the reasons why there are two government inquiries into COVID-19 right now. We've got 204 terms of reference points. The government has 17. Has 19 of one of them, and
rather than
and one has 23. So we're working to get to the bottom of it.
Absolutely amazing. I had
Just,
no idea that they were cranking on this.
Thank you. Well, this is what you're supporting, Mike.
This is huge.
People-
This is so huge.
Yeah. Yep. If you scroll down more again, I go into a bit more about the centralisation aspect. National hearings, which Clear United and Freedom Phone are a branded partner. National hearings, it talks about that. It talks about the backstory behind the inquiry, which is really super important. We go into things like the rejection of pandemic plans, of existing pandemic response plans, how they were rejected outright. We give evidences of connection and nepotism and conflicts of interest between Bill Gates and New Zealand institutions as well as international ones. If you go down, it's almost finished. So World Health Organization influencing guidelines, we talk about that. So that's again talks about digital surveillance in there, global preparedness framework, international health regulations amendments to 2005. Go through that. We talk about artificial intelligence, infrastructure, regulation, digital surveillance aspects. We talk about, again, Gates's connections to all these organizations, universities in New Zealand that came out in support of the medical tyranny that are funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And then basically, if you keep going, we're almost finished here.
Yeah.
It talks about the control, abandonment of pandemic plans there, of course, quotes university paper references which incriminate them. Left or right leaning government, does it make any difference? No. And then if you keep going, we
Are you,
talk about
are you
digital.
still raising funds for this? Are you looking
Yes,
for
we are.
funds for this?
No, we are. We are flying in the plane, and as we're flying in the plane, we're building it.
Yeah.
You know, but
I
you know,
know-
brother,
I know
the
the
thing is,
drill.
the thing is, brother, if I don't start this, I mean, I've spent a lot of my own money on it so far, and you know, I've lost all my contracts and things like that. But from when I was in business, you know,
Yeah, no.
2019.
Yeah.
And so I'm building this as I'm flying. So section summaries around the different components of the document, finishing off with, if you scroll down, the summary, and then it talks about the people involved in what we're doing. So if you scroll down again, you've got all these people like here, which is only some of the people that we're talking about here. So it's not all of it, by the way. This is just the ones that are happy enough to be brave enough to have their names put out there. But there is a lot of people that are undercover helping with data. I've got former policemen and policemen that are current involved with
Because
this.
you used to be a policeman yourself, yeah?
Yes, I did for a very short time, but I'm ex-New Zealand Army. I completed the military intelligence introduction courses in the New Zealand Army and learned all the basics of military intel. And that's how I basically put this together, Mike. So this is my own work. I've had it peer reviewed by scientists and all sorts of people.
What's the location within Hamilton?
I'll be keen on everyone's views.
Absolutely amazing. I had no idea that you were cranking this hard on this stuff. Wow. And to do the documentary and to do this, I mean, the key is you're uncovering data with the documentary, and then you're formatting that to actually make things right. The real question is, would they actually do something? You know, with this, because in the US, they literally, for instance, we had an election that was questioned and the Supreme Court wouldn't even hear it. You know?
Exactly. Yeah, and that's why we are going so determinedly to build an international profile of credible people.
You know, this is similar to what I see others doing. You know, Phil Lane that I mentioned earlier, and then also Sasha. They're building their own little ecosystems for this type of accountability. And I wonder if there's an alignment that could be realized, bringing it all together. We should probably dig into that, especially using kind of the digital ecosystems to do that. But there's a broader conversation. Thank you for your work here. This is this is where the rubber meets the road. If you can actually get a body that will actually hear it, you know.
I think we will get that body. I do. I'm absolutely certain of it. But that's why precision inquiry needs to be carried out, and it has to be precise. No rabbit holes, no conspiracy theories, all those things. It's got to be absolutely solid in this, because the moment that you touch on anything that mainstream media and co-opted organisations that are woke and left and tyrannical, the moment you get something wrong, they'll be all over us like a cheap suit. And so I'm not prepared to connect with people that are talking about how the Pleiadians are going to save us. Won't go there. And that's not to diminish people who want to believe that. That's fine if they want to believe that.
Yeah.
I'm interested in meat and potato evidence and basics. Oh, look, I'm not the blooming smartest man in the world, but I'm smart enough to do this, and I know how to pull this together. And, you know, Mike, you know, if you were willing to have your name on that document, it'd be there, because you are helping me behind the scenes to do this. I'm hoping to be able to take Digital World and Clearphones on tour with me through this, to sell them on your behalf, which would help us a little bit, but also get a commercial arrangement there.
Yeah.
Everybody knows about Clear and Freedom Phone in New Zealand now through my networks. We haven't really gone there yet. Obviously, you've supported the River of Lies, New Zealand's pandemic documentary, which we're involved in episode 2 now, which has been edited. And so I would really like to bite into taking the digital world message, standing New Zealand Aotearoa up as well, and using this national tour that we're doing of hearings to really push the envelope on that messaging.
Do you see a linkage between standing Aotearoa up and doing this inquiry?
Absolutely, I do.
Wow.
100%.
Okay. Yeah. So we should probably figure out the alignment there and then do it. 'Cause
Aotearoa.org. You know, all those sites that you've got there.
Yeah.
You know, let's pick what we're working with, and let's do
Yeah.
it. This is going to be the vehicle for it, no doubt.
I'll take a task this week to come back to you within a week to actually have some frameworks around how that could be realized, knowing that we've got to also include massive amounts of other people and ensure that there's alignment with a body of people that can support this. Kind of like how we started this conversation around, you had a massive following. I mean, 80,000 people in New Zealand is a massive following. From when I lived there in 2011 to 13, there was only like 4.3 million people. So 80,000 people, that's a big deal. So
Yeah, no, you're right, Michael. And to give you some context, well, 2 months into speaking up, I had 4.5 million people through my messaging. By the time we got to the elections, we had about 7 million through it, and so it was a very, very big time. But of course, what I can testify for people is how the system crunches you down to censor you.
And when the voting actually finished, what did it look like? With Jacinda, what did it look like? What did it turn up like? What were the numbers with the voting, with the election?
Right, so we used the same vote counting system and security system as the Americans did during their 2020 elections.
That's the Dominion voting system, yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
It was related to the Dominion, one of the subsidiary companies, but the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation directly provided the electoral security software directly. And so what that meant was suddenly they're telling me after the election I had 30,000 votes when I had almost 3 times that in my personal donor and support network. It was just unbelievable. I mean, the entire network of people, of which there were tens and tens and tens of thousands of people across New Zealand, couldn't figure out
And
what the hell happened.
what people don't understand is in New Zealand, it's a melting pot of a lot of different nationalities, a lot of people from all around the world, every skin color type, every dialect. You have to actually speak English to actually become a resident or a citizen. But what people don't know is to vote, you don't have to be a resident or a citizen. You have to pay a power bill. So think about it. There's not a lot of people that are paying power bills, and to be able to even get 30,000 people, which I believe, if you're saying you know that it was 3 times that, so over 90,000, do you know what Jacinda's number was, or just off the top of your head?
Yeah. I mean, she got, I think it was something like 52% of the vote. So she didn't need a coalition partner. She was able to go in without a coalition partner. We haven't.
So don't make the panels, just do the.
Go ahead, Charles. Go ahead. Billy, thank you so much for just being you.
Did I hear this correctly that in New Zealand, to be able to vote, you have to show that you're paying a power bill?
Yeah, they have throughout the country, you have it's a power company that's basically a really good co-op type system. It's called Trust Power. And everyone basically gets their power from Trust Power, okay? And so they understand a name and an address and a bill. And what they did was they said, and this is in a lot of indigenous communities, this is one of the big problems they have. Like in Vanuatu, we had this. In the Pacific Coalition, where we had a ton of different people that came through, they're like, well, how can you roll out these systems? Because if you have members and nationals and citizens, how does it vote? And in Vanuatu, big problems. But in New Zealand's actually the example that we use. It's like, if you're a contributing member of society and paying a power bill, that means you live there. That means you're there. And so that's how they actually do it. Does that make sense, Charles? And Billy, does that have any other feedback or color on that?
I guess.
Yeah.
So if I'm kind of living off the grid, I got no say in anything.
Yeah.
Is that the basic idea?
I wonder,
Well,
I'll bet you could go in, you could probably go in if you had a national, you know, if you had a passport or stuff like that, driver's license. Well, I have a driver's license. I couldn't do it from the driver's license. Billy, go ahead.
Well, the reason I ask is because I have an Auntie Vicky here, which will eventually have a conversation with you and me, Mike. But she lives completely off of the grid, and she's a Kanaka Maoli. But so from that perspective, from what I understand, yeah, she has no rights to vote for anything, and that quite doesn't make sense. But I'll be quiet and listen.
Yeah. Go ahead, Billy.
Yeah, exactly, brother. So, I mean, a lot of our people are not registered in the electoral system, which is a problem. So it's the same thing here for Māori. So just for those who don't know, Māori and Māori are the same. We're the same ethnic family. Just our R is the Hawaiian L, and our T is the Hawaiian K. So when we say kapu, we say tapu, but we say wahine is the same for us, wahine for women. So I just wanted to clarify that. So it is a big problem. And of course, you know, then they turn around and say, well, you know, don't moan about the government if you don't vote.
Yeah.
But a lot of our people feel it's an illegitimate system anyway, very much like our Hawaiian family, who are aware of these issues. And so, yeah, it's not a good one, but at least we don't have 17 million alien immigrants in our country lining up by Joe Biden to vote in the next election. Oh boy, I tell you.
It's not just
It's a
voting in the
shocker.
next election. It's how that party can actually stay in power forever. I mean, I shouldn't say forever, but for a long period of time. Because from what I understand, majority of those 17 million or 14 million or 12 million, they don't even know, right? But they're actually getting a monthly stipend. So they get a card and they get money on it, $1,200 to $1,800 a month. Plus they're getting a cell phone. Plus they're getting welfare or what's, you know, food stamp type monies. So think about it. And that's why they would come from different parts of the world, and they would just come up and they're just going to figure it out. There's also housing that's involved. I don't know the details, but you talk about voting, you talk about corruption, you talk about transparency, you talk about, you know, that is the way, in my opinion, it's a really good way to be able to get the voting side of it. This gal that you're talking about, Charles, let's say that she actually lives off the grid and she actually pulls in solar. The real value would be, for instance, and this is why I love Trust Power down there. They would buy power if you were actually pushing it back. So if you made the investment of solar, they would buy it at a much higher rate than the ratios in other parts of the world. One, and at the end of the year, they would look at their operating budget and what they actually cost to run it. And they would send a check out to everyone that actually paid a power bill to balance that out. They didn't make any money at the end of the year. They put it back into the people. I mean, Billy, have you gotten a power bill, a check back from Trust Power? No, you're on mute.
No.
You've never gotten,
nothing like that.
you've never gotten one back?
I've had them in the past, but not lately.
Not lately. Yeah. So I guess when I was there, it was 2011 to 2013. So over a decade ago. But I'll tell you what, I loved how the country was run then. And for those that are not aware, the core reason we were there was a counterbalance in the open source and closed source world. So we went down to New Zealand because they were one of 3 jurisdictions that actually would honor software patent laws, but they were under attack. Microsoft specifically had lobbyists that were down there, and they tried to do all these different things. And we were working every week. You can see articles that we wrote. I specifically even wrote where we would say, no, if you change this, it does this. If you change this, it does this. And we went into Parliament. We went into the leadership. The Prime Minister directly took a call from me directly and actually talked with us about it. And what I loved about it was they did the right thing. They actually upheld software patents didn't exist in the New Zealand country. You can go read a book called Tools and Weapons from Brad. Let's see here. Brad Smith. He was the chief legal counsel of Microsoft back in. Now he's actually the president of Microsoft, and they'll actually forward this by Mr. Gates himself. But the reason that I bring this up is Microsoft lost the open source and closed source battle on New Zealand's turf. If you read this book, it spells it out that in New Zealand, the open source war was won in New Zealand. And so after that, and it was the same years that we were there, after that, Microsoft actually purchased HubSpot, GitHub, not GitLabs, but GitHub. They actually purchased it and then started going into the open source realm. So a lot of history, a lot of depth, and you'd have to wonder, why would a company like Microsoft be involved in legislation around software laws, patent laws, copyright laws, and involved in these voting systems? I mean, why is it that Dominion gets money, or even these other ecosystems like spinoffs of Dominion get funds? And if you dig into it, the software developers have come in front of the Congress of the United States of America and provided testimony under oath that the code and technology that they actually built to be able to say, if this person is who they want to win, how they can actually use technology to just, oh, this happened, this happened, this happened. And there's no way to really trace it per se, but the code and the software developers behind the code actually did it. So with that being said, we'll go ahead and wrap up today's meeting. We appreciate your time, your attention. If you notice, there's a couple things that we didn't do during this meeting. We'll talk about that in another time, but is there any feedback that you want to go over or things you want to talk about before we wrap up and call it a day?
Hey, Michael, it's Beck. How you going?
Good, good.
I'm not going to be talking about anything political. That stuff just blows my mind up. So I want to talk about technology and frameworks.
Awesome, awesome.
Because yesterday I was on an interesting call. For those who don't know, I work in infrastructure technology here in Australia. And I was on a defense case study for Amazon services. And this is for Amazon Pay. And basically what it is a completely automated infrastructure for defense that's fully automated and run. So you just go and buy your food like most people would have seen those Amazon web, shoppers, pay with your palm, whatever it is. So I was on one of those case studies and I was able to implement, some of my ideas, talk about frameworks. The frameworks were one of the hot topics because the system that they had implemented, I did ask if there was any blockchain layers inside of any of all their layers that they had. There was no layers at all. And it was interesting because there was a lot of different engineers and data analysts. And what I was kind of just reflecting on is the education that people don't know about the technology. I know for a fact that Australia has implemented blockchain technology, but I think the education around these systems is not fully understood. So I was able to put my best foot forward and let the guys know about, the different frameworks. And I think, by 2025 or 2026, the frameworks are going to be a hot topic because the IoT, I'm staying away from anything that's interconnected, even from an infrastructure perspective, because there's so many layers and all these things are connected. And I told them myself, keep me out of that because not even you guys know what you're doing.
There's two parts to this. One, I don't know if you know this, in the United States of America, there's a chain called Good Earth. I don't know if you have it down in Australia or other parts, but it's Whole Foods. It's basically a natural, they don't have meat. There's some interesting things that they don't have, but even this last week, I'll make a post on it. I took photos of their prices. So I've been watching the prices as they just continue to go up. And what's very interesting is I'm convinced that it's seeing what people would actually pay and do, because food is the real currency. It's not gold, it's not silver, it's not some type of a paper dollar or even a digital dollar. Food is what's valuable. We all basically get hungry. So what do we do when we're hungry? And when you look at what Amazon is doing, they because of the cost of funds that they got, the money, the cost of money, they were able to literally revolutionize the purchasing and shopping experience from a centralized system. And not only, so what you're talking about is when you can go into a store, they have this thing called Amazon One where you actually pay with just your palm, and you link from your palms different credit cards from a digital wallet to a physical hand. So they're not inserting in something into your hand, they just have your palm. So if you take that, that's what they currently have in all of these stores. So they actually full on bought this physical store for food and implementing these Amazon One palm readers in these stores. But what they tested at prior to this, now get this, is not something where you go and grab a shopping cart and throw all your stuff in the shopping cart and then go put your palm up. But where they're going with it is they know who you are when you enter the store. And then when you take something off of the shelf, it's automatically yours. You don't even need to go and actually swipe your palm to go through a checkout store. So one of the things I see them doing is they have certain lanes for people that just have a hand basket, and certain lanes for people that have a cart. And the reason,
so that's their bigger concept. This concept was just like a smaller defense one. So they're implementing it in defense, just for the defense people. But with all that food, under the same
kind of like a commissary, like a big commissary store.
Yeah, so if it's defense or if you're in the military or something, then, you go to the cafe at your base and then you get all your food, and then it's artificial intelligence that recognizes your face when you use your credit card. So it's probably the same what you're talking about, but it's just like a more secure concept. But I guess that my whole point is I was able to, there was a lot of talk about frameworks. And I think frameworks, for me, in my 11 years in infrastructure technology, the decentralized digital governance is my home. Everything that's in there is for all. And I'm sure when people begin to open up their hearts and ping their love out to the world, that they would understand that it's not like them against us. I think we have this confirmation bias instead of a collaboration bias at times, and I just want to be the happy person, all right?
Yeah. It'd be interesting to learn more about what you're talking about. Do you actually go to these bases or commissaries, or have you been into them?
Well, this was just one that kind of just came across my email. Somebody asked if I wanted to. They knew that I was interested in because I pitched, right? Remember how I pitched on the blockchain? Yeah. And that was actually the chain here in Australia was the Ligon blockchain.
And this is specifically Amazon in Australia that's doing this?
I can't confirm that, but okay. It was Amazon. The concept was Amazon, and the whole reason why I was there was because I was invited because someone knew that I was interested in data security blockchain. So I was able to, and they've got no idea about frameworks. They want to know about frameworks. They don't know the right frameworks. And I'm sure it will evolve over time, but overall it was very interesting. And the more I know, the more I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, I just wanted to end by saying thank you for everyone's involvement. If there's other comments, you're welcome to pop them out now. Otherwise, we'll plan on seeing everyone every week. We'll end today with just a real quick video and a reminder from Phil Lane Jr. Hopefully, well, you probably won't even be able to hear this as streaming, but we'll see if it works.
Mitakiepi, my very, very beloved relatives of our human family. We live in a corrupt global system.
But are we a part of it?
Are we part of it? Are we part of it?
No.
No.
No. No. We've been very patient as the few control resources we all need. The question is, can we change it?
We've all heard the voices shouting, it's not your turn.
Our heart aches to do more, to be more. But time is running out.
Time is running out.
Time is running out.
We start by
Right, nothing
completely
coming
trusting
across.
we can make a
It's
difference.
okay, you're just watching that
Because
live.
with one heart and one mind and many bodies, in unity, we can do anything.
Together, we must take unprecedented, unified action.
And transform the world around us.
No matter how challenging that may be.
Individual sovereignty, freedom, love, and justice. Unite us all.
Because there are Indigenous-led technologies coming.
It gives us all the opportunity to stand.
To give, to love.
That's what responsible technology should do.
If you are one of those who believe it's your turn,
Stand together.
Rise up.
everyone.
Everywhere.
You, as a rising generation.
Much love, everyone. We'll see you next.